Good evening. I'd like to call the January 11, 2022 meeting of the Dare County Board of Education to order. We're meeting at First Flight High School, and the time is approximately 5 o'clock. Before we begin, I would like to request a moment of silence. And during this moment of silence, I'd like to remember Ryan Riker Clark, who was a student here at First Flight High School. Today is Riker's 18th birthday. And Riker passed recently, and I'd like to say prayers for him and his family and friends. So at this moment, a moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to welcome everybody here and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start our agenda, I'd like to make some comments here, and I'd like to talk about the positive things that have gone on in this school system. We are a top 10 school system within the state of North Carolina, and notwithstanding this COVID pandemic, we are going to get back to that status as soon as this pandemic is over. Of course, we haven't been testing during this period of time, but once the testing is resumed, you're going to find out that we've put the Board of Education in the central office have put the resources in place to get us back to where we were. So be confident in that regard, and the Board of Education is going to work very hard to make sure we give the resources to the teachers, the staff, and the people within the school system, the resources they need to be successful. We had the top 6, was it, graduation rates in the state of North Carolina the past couple years. That's good. It's very good, and it's a testament to how hard our staff works to accomplish this. And we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards here. I would like to say that we had an opportunity to go through the First Flight school system today. Elementary school, middle school, high school. And I'd like to say that, the students, staff, working very hard and to keep us up there. I'd like to say to the people that keep our schools clean, job well done. Our schools are phenomenally clean. And it's a testament to their hard work as well. So everybody's working really hard. We appreciate your input in terms of making us better. I mean, that's what we're all striving to do, is get better. Our first order of business this evening is approval of the agenda. The agenda includes remarks, recognitions, instructional highlights, public comment, announcements, approval of the consent agenda, reports and items for information, unfinished business, a review of the board policy 4231/5021/7263 face coverings, and the first reading of policy manual updates and comments from board members. Do I hear a motion from my board members to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Boswell. Any seconds?
A second.
Second by Frank Hester. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. All those opposed? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please. The agenda has been approved, excuse me. Next on the agenda is recognitions. Dr. Keith Parker.
Go. Yep. There we go. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we do want to recognize some outstanding staff and students from First Flight High School. And so to do that, I'm going to ask Principal Lansing and his staff to come forward and share some of those recognitions with us.
Dr. Farley, Chairman Tauber, and all of our board members, thank you for opening tonight's meeting by remembering and reflecting on our student record clerk. That's very meaningful to all of us here. Thank you also for the opportunity to spend this afternoon with you all and for the chance to highlight some of the amazing things that are happening at First Flight High School this year. We will have an opportunity to highlight our CTE and internship programs this evening, but before we do, we want to recognize the students and staff that make First Flight such an amazing place. We always want to be a well-rounded, inclusive environment for all students, and we want to recognize some of their achievements so far this year. Our first group are AP Scholars. The following students earned recognition as either an AP Scholar or AP Scholar with honors. An AP Scholar is a student who receives a 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams, while an AP Scholar with honors is granted to students who receive an average score of at least a 3.25 on all AP exams taken, and scores of 3 or higher on 4 or more of these exams. First is Mason Gates. Next is Damian Gregory. Also, Allegra Mackenzie Reese. Maggie McNinch. Reagan Minich. Ben Tonneson. And finally, Dennis Wang. Congratulations again, guys. Our next group is being recognized for their participation with the VFW Voice of Democracy Audio Essay Contest and the annual Voice of Democracy Audio Essay Contest sponsored by VFW Post 10950. 3 students earned top honors. Junior Emmy Benton won first place. Junior Daisy Morales Bravo won second place. And senior Jaden Payne took third place. Each student received a certificate from Vice Commander Richard Probst, as well as monetary prize for their winning entries as a part of the nationwide scholarship program the organization runs each year. Benton's essay also earned an award at the district level, which she'll be presented with this weekend in Elizabeth City. Journalism advisor Steve Hamp was also named the VFW Post Teacher of the Year. The next group we have an opportunity to recognize took part in the ACT Work Keys this past winter. We had 3 early grads who took the ACT Career Readiness Battery of Tests, and all 3 placed with high scores. Brett Gebner earned a gold level National Career Readiness Certificate. Dylan Evans earned a silver level National Career Readiness Certificate. And Brandy Kusina also earned a silver level National Career Readiness Certificate. Our next group is coming from HOSA. Sadly, many of our HOSA members are not able to attend this evening, but we do have one here, and we will recognize the whole group still. We also want to recognize health sciences teacher Jennifer Kovacs and her HOSA Club, a student organization for those interested in health sciences education. Set a school record with 47 units of blood collected in the fall blood drive hosted here. Additionally, 3 students attended regional competitions and found success there also. Sophia Martin, J.P. Kovacs, won first place in CPR and first aid. And Hadley Hedges won second place in medical terminology. Our last group of students that we'll be recognizing are for athletics. First, we want to recognize Milos Gorgol on his 100th win in wrestling. We also wish to recognize our state championship 2021 boys 4x800 relay first place winners, Warner Campbell, Max Bolin, Devin Coughlin, and Henry Stetcher. Not to be outdone, we also had the women's first place 4x800 relay team with Maggie McNinch, Tatum Dramatis, Maya Salch, and Maddie Wagner. And lastly, we had 2 second place winners, Lydia Sillies with the second place in the high jump, and Warner Campbell with second place in the men's 800. Finally, we wish to recognize several staff members for their outstanding achievements and for representing First Flight High School and our community so well. First, Steve Hanf, our 2021-22 Teacher of the Year. Mr. Terry Brown is our 2021-22 Classified Employee of the Year. And although unable to be here tonight, Lisa Simpson was recognized as the 2021-22 Child Nutrition Services Employee of the Year. Unable to attend due to another game, Chad Williams, who is a First Flight teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director, has put on the Good Guys versus Cancer basketball tournament annually for the past several years, and this event has grown tremendously. The event brings in top basketball talent from all over, and thousands of dollars in proceeds are donated each year. Join me in congratulating Mr. Williams. That's okay. Our final recognition this evening is Coach Jim Prince, who was Coach Prince has been recognized this past fall throughout the community, but he should be celebrated again tonight for serving students and athletes for the past 50 years as a football coach, teacher, mentor, and leader. Again, thank you all for the chance to celebrate all of our staff and students today and tonight. The floor is back to Chairman Tauber. Thank you.
Thanks to all the students and teachers and staff that have won awards. Appreciate your contributions. We will now move to public comment, and I'll read the following statement before we begin. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to ask Principal Lansing to come back up and share some instructional highlights with the board. We're going to focus this evening on a program that means a lot to us, that's had a tremendous amount of impact for our students as they move into their high school year, but we offer all of our students the opportunity to participate and engage in an internship program moving into their 11th and 12th grade year. And this is a tremendous opportunity for our students because, as you know, there is really an endless supply of really engaging and tremendous learning opportunities on the Outer Banks in a range of businesses and industries, and we're excited about these opportunities. And so Mr. Lansing, along with his CTE staff, Dr. Castillo, are going to highlight a video, but also highlight the program and the opportunities our students have for that tonight. So I think the board's really going to enjoy and appreciate this highlight. So Principal Lansing, if you'd come forward, we'd go into that now. Thank you. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Parker. And I am just going to take a moment to introduce our head of our CTE department and CDC here at First Flight High School, Mr. Duke Wallen, and also the head of the internships, not just for us, but also for Manio High School, Cami Romano, and have them kind of direct this show. They are the experts, and I would invite you up now.
Mr. Chairman, Board of Education, Dr. Farley, and Central Office staff. My name is Duke Wallen, and I'm the Career and Technical Education Coordinator here at First Flight, and this is my counterpart.
I'm Cami Romano, and I'm the Internship Coordinator here at First Flight High School and Manio High School.
We'd like to, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to showcase some of our programs here today. We heard that you had a chance to go to all of our CTE programs, and hopefully you got to see some pretty exciting stuff today. So thank you for doing that. Also, the meal that was provided for you this afternoon, completely done by our students in our Culinary Arts and Hospitality program. So hopefully you guys got a chance to taste some of the great things going on in our culinary program. So thank you so much. So there is a slide that we shared with you guys. I know that you got a chance to see the video about our internships and our partnerships with the business community. Hopefully you got to get a sense of how important our relationship with our community partners is. We just wanted to kind of showcase some of the things in career and technical education that are going on our campus here at First Flight. First of all, we have over 25 courses that we offer in career and technical education, everything from Adobe visual design and computer science to our culinary program. We have our carpentry teacher here as well tonight. And then, of course, marketing, business courses, health science are some of those 25 programs. A little bit about our CTE students. We have just under 1,000 students here at First Flight. 850 of those students are taking career and technical education classes. So it's great to see students engaged. They're getting essential employability skills in our classes, making network connections with business and industry. They're working, they're in work-based learning. They're getting jobs after they leave our building right here within the community. Also, to let you know that 91% of our students that take CTE classes, they actually go on to learn at COA, a technical school, or four-year university. Out of that 91%, 75% of them said that CTE was the reason why they stayed engaged in school, because it provided relevant real-world application of what they were learning here in our campus. So just wanted to kind of share some of that with you. So kind of going through the slide, we'll go clockwise starting on the left-hand side. In the video, you had a chance to see Maya at her internship site, so we wanted to kind of just highlight that. We have currently 40 students in the internship program here at First Flight. That's down a little bit just because of COVID. There's still a lot of businesses kind of holding back on allowing our students to enter as interns. In particular, the health sciences, with the relationship with the hospital and some of the medical areas, we've had to kind of put that on hold for a little while until they can get back on their feet. Again, going clockwise, we're talking about community engagement and relationships. There isn't a day or a week that goes by without a business in the community calling and saying, we need workers. In particular, in the restaurant and hospitality industry and in retail, we're getting phone calls and emails asking for our students to come work. So last year, we put on a job fair for our youth. It was a youth employment fair. We had over 40 employers here on campus hiring on the spot. It was a day off of school, so participation was a little low. We had just under 50 students that came back that day. All 50 of them were offered at least one job, some of them multiple jobs that day. We found that a success, so we've actually gone this year, we've already scheduled in March, and we're partnering with N.C.G.S to have a youth employment fair, hiring on the spot again. We're looking to have 50 employers here in the gym. It's going to be a two-part program where we have it open to our students at the end of the school day. They'll be able to come in, interview, talk to employers about seasonal and part-time, some full-time work. And then after school, we're opening it up to the community. So actually, folks can come, adults and people from the community can come in and also apply for some jobs as well. So it's going to be kind of two-part, kind of giving back or sharing that opportunity with folks in our community. So teachers engage students in some pretty unique projects. You'll see the sticky notes, the FF up there. That's actually done with little sticky notes about this big. They did an assignment on pixels in the computer science class and then kind of made it a project. If you had a chance to see computer sciences today, you saw a whole bunch of that artwork displayed in the classroom. Each month, we also do a guest speaker series called Career Cafe, where we bring in guest speakers from the community to talk about careers, some of their experiences, challenges, also about topics that engage students in the community. Last month, we had a gentleman come in with a classic 1978, I believe, Camaro. He brought that on campus and he did complete restoration. He was also an entrepreneur, and he kind of talked a little bit about that as a career, as his entrepreneur side, and also the opportunity for other than four-year university. And I'll talk about in just in a second that some of the students in our classes, we of course encourage our students to attend college, because when they go off to four-year university, after that, they're going to pick a career. So having the opportunity to look at and explore and be exposed to different things while they're in high school, when it's free, instead of going off to college and then deciding this might not be something I want to do. That's why we kind of look at some of that exposure while we're here in high school. So in the bottom of the right-hand corner, you'll see an example of some student work in our Adobe Visual Graphic Design class. The students actually created some scary or spooky movie posters, and then they actually had that as kind of like a little film series in the class as well. Going forward, we've also hosted, again, 2 career fairs, one in last year, earlier in the year, that was in health sciences. We had over 50 different people involved from the hospital and the medical field on campus, providing an opportunity for students to see and interview and talk to people in the medical field. And then last week, we had a public safety career fair, showcase where law enforcement, public safety, firefighting, EMT, SBI, the FBI was here. Everywhere from Duck down to Nag's Head participated, all the law enforcement and fire. And that was pretty exciting to see that. Students totally engaged. That's open to all students on campus. Through a 2-hour block, and we found that to be pretty successful. You got a chance to see culinary arts today, of course, and then got to taste some of that. We've kind of talked a little bit about that. So not only they're learning about nutrition and math and measurements and so forth, but also they had an opportunity to give back to the community. We wanted to highlight that around Thanksgiving, they actually made 80 small personalized pies, pumpkin pies, for the senior center in Nag's Head. So we wanted to kind of showcase that. Some of our students go into military pathways as well. We have a number of students that are interested in that. We offer the ASVAB here on campus. And then, of course, every last Friday of the month, or last Monday of the month, we offer Military Monday, where we have a recruiter on campus. Sometimes they're just in plain civilian clothes. Other times they're in the full getup, and they're here just kind of a meet and greet and kind of getting students, again, exposed to other things other than, four-year university. So you also got a chance, Principal Lansing talked about HOSA as one of our student organizations. We actually have 4 career and technical student organizations on campus. In addition to that, Skills USA is another one for the trades areas. We have DECA, which is with our marketing and business students. And then we started a National Technical Honor Society chapter this year. So that is an honor society dedicated strictly for students in career and technical education. So with that, if you have any questions for Principal Lansing, Cammie or I, we'd be free to entertain that. Thank you.
Frank Hester, I have a quick question. When you talked before about employers calling you up and, looking for some potential, to increase the workforce, are they also asking to be able to help with journeyman programs and shadowing and help to show the kids, what lies ahead if they choose that path? The meal that was prepared today was great. Thank you for that. And I'm also extremely happy to hear that you're providing alternate choices for kids, and extremely happy that they're working to bring the military to the forefront also. So thank you for all that. It's very positive.
Thank you. Yes, so big on work-based learning, and Cammie might be able to attest to that. But in addition to the internship programs, we offer job shadows. When those employers are calling us, we're trying to engage them in other things other than just looking for those part-time employers. We're asking them, hey, come on campus, share your story with our students about how you got to where you are as well. So that's why we offer the different speaking engagements and so forth as well. Mm-hmm.
I have had one employer that reached out to me trying to bring in some of our students for internships at their business, and I'll share that information with you all. But anything else? Just wanted to thank you for an excellent briefing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all again, and I know that we have a video prepared that we can kind of close out our instructional highlight with. Thank you.
My name is Shannon Castillo, and I'm the CTE director here in Dare County. One of the biggest goals that we would like to do is to increase our internship opportunities for students in the high school. So we created a new position this year for an internship coordinator, and she works to increase our internships and increase our community partnerships and options for our students to be able to go out and explore the workforce and workforce opportunities.
My name is Cammie Romano, and I'm the internship coordinator here at First Flight High School as well as Manio High School. My job is to network with local businesses in the community to find placements for our students to participate in an internship. Internships provide a wholesome experience for our students because they're able to experience things in the real world of work that they may not have the opportunity to otherwise by just sitting in a classroom.
I'm Maya Albright. I'm a senior at First Flight High School, and I'm doing an internship at the Coastal Animal Hospital. I really want to go to vet school and further my career path as a vet, and I think it's really preparing me and showing me a lot of what goes on. This internship is really giving me hands-on experience about the field.
The opportunity to participate in an internship is available for all students. There is an application process. The internship is an honors level course. They do have a project portfolio that they're responsible for. They do have to work a minimum of 120 hours. They have to check in weekly. It is individual, so they get to leave school and go to their work sites during the school day to ensure that they complete the 120-hour requirement. We've had a few students that got offered jobs within their internships for the summer. Not all internships are paid. They may be paid or unpaid, but a couple of the students were offered paid part-time positions upon completing their internship. We have one student who's interning at the airport. and he's taking flying lessons to pursue his dream of going to Emory-Riddle.
Our high schools really needed to have an internship coordinator to dedicate her time to going out to the workplaces, meeting with the business partners, expanding our community outreach and community partnerships for our students to be able to go explore various opportunities that exist.
Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm an intern at First Flight Middle School and High School, and I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade bands. So I really want to be a teacher when I get older, and specifically music education. And this internship is teaching me not only how to teach, write lesson plans, but how to teach different grade levels and how to compensate each student and what their needs are.
So another thing about our internships, yes, they provide students an opportunity to get some hands-on experiences, real-world relevant experience. Also in our CTE classes, students get essential employability skills. So you ask any employer out there what one of the things they're looking for, and they're saying, hey, communication skills, problem solving, leadership, those types of things. If we can instill that in our students while they're in school, that's preparing them for the next step in workforce.
Our mission is to take our internships to the next level, and our hope is that this is our first step in getting to that place.
Thank you for that warm presentation. We will now move to public comment, and I'll read the following statement before we begin. The Dare County Board of Education welcomes the opportunity to hear from the public during its regularly scheduled meetings. This portion of the meeting is for the board to hear matters of interest or concern from the public. Public comment is not intended to be a dialogue for questions and answers or for impromptu board responses. The board may determine whether to provide information or responses to public comments if it is necessary or appropriate at a later time. Concerns regarding school personnel are usually most effectively addressed with the administration at the school or central office levels or through other existing board policies, and those alternatives are encouraged by the board. The board appreciates courteous and respectful presentations. Obscene, vulgar, indecent, abusive, threatening, or profane statements or reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. The system we have in place is that each person or organization will be granted 3 minutes. We will be using an electronic timing system that will provide the speaker with a green light when time starts. The light will move to yellow when the speaker has 1 minute left. The red light indicates that time is up and the speaker will be asked to leave the podium to allow for the next speaker to address the board. We have a number of public comments, and we hope that you respect the speakers. And the first person signed up for public comment this evening is Amanda Lotus.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Since a large part of the problem we all face today is due to the censorship of critical information, I'd like to share an In the News report. Links will be available tomorrow at daretoshareobx.org. Sarah Blattner, age 14. Vanessa Romano, age 13. Weverton Silva, age 13. The names go on. All died days after taking a Pfizer vaccine. Source, nomoresilence.world. Yesterday, in an interview with Yahoo Finance, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla said, "The 2 doses of the vaccine offer very limited protection, if any." Source, ph.news.yahoo.com. It's worth noting that Bourla once stated that 2 doses of the mRNA vaccine were 100% effective in preventing the illness. Are you interested in checking your vaccine batch codes for associated deaths and disabilities? Curiously, 5% of the batches appear to have produced 90% of the adverse reactions. Some Moderna batches are associated with 50 times the number of deaths and disabilities compared to other batches. Source, howbadismybatch.com. As we've seen over the past 2 years, data and statistics can be manipulated and skewed. COVID cases have clearly been overinflated by including people with no symptoms and diagnosing anyone entering the hospital for an unrelated issue as a COVID patient if they test positive. So one of the most reliable data points we have is all-cause mortality. It's very hard to massage that statistic, as people are either dead or they're not. Their inclusion in the National Death Index database is based on one primary criteria: they've died, regardless of the cause. One America, a national life insurance company based in Indianapolis, reports working-age people aged 18 to 64 are dying of all causes at a rate that is 40% higher than pre-pandemic rates. According to CEO Scott Davison, a majority of the death claims filed are not classified as COVID-19 deaths, so something else is driving up the death rate. Source, thecentersquare.com. And I'll leave you with this. I do trust in science, but coercion is not science. Withholding data is not science. Manipulating data is not science. Cherry-picking studies is not science. Social conditioning is not science. Fear-mongering is not science. And censorship is not science. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Katie Morgan.
The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak. George Orwell. Tonight, I speak to you in the truth. As most of us agree, the current quarantine guidelines are absolutely arbitrary and irrational. Guidelines are not laws, they're not even mandates. They have not been voted on by anyone in the legislature. They're simply recommendations to follow. And they're the only reason that's even somewhat logical at this point as to why children are still required to be masked, because no mask equals mass quarantines, and quarantines equal virtual learning, and we can all also agree virtual learning is not productive or ideal. I agree with Mary Ann Balance's statement at the last Board of Education meeting, quote, "To be clear, I don't believe we're masking to prevent COVID at this point. We're only masking to prevent quarantines." She is in fact correct. The quarantining is absolutely damaging the students, teachers, and disproportionately low-income and marginalized families who typically don't have proper resources to teach children from home. Myself, coming from a similar background, I understand the plight of these families who, unlike teachers and people in administration, do not get paid when their children are at home, when 99% of the time they're perfectly healthy and test negative for COVID. So why are we doing it? Again, because of a guideline. Something we should do does not mean something we have to do. It's not mandatory. Right now, quarantining is your excuse for requiring kids to be masked, which again, I understand, but what happens when the script changes and the government says, unless you're vaccinated, you will have to quarantine? Just replace the word vaccine everywhere you see the word mask, because that is coming. And in speaking with most of you, you are against COVID vaccine mandates for kids required to go to school. Once again, as with masking, I believe vaccinating your child is a personal choice. I do not believe that this gene therapy should be determinant upon whether or not your child has to quarantine, or in reference to any quarantine guidelines whatsoever. You can be vaccinated, boosted, and still get COVID. That is an absolute fact. I've heard the same repeated rhetoric from most of you that the line you will not cross when you finally say no, the proverbial hill you will die on, is a vaccine mandate. But why can't we stop quarantining healthy kids now, therefore never letting it get to the step with the gene therapy mandates? Well, I know the Omicron variant is more transmissible. It is, by definition, not any more deadly. As a matter of fact, it is incredibly less severe. It has been likened to the common cold, even by the CDC. Where there is risk, there must be choice. Stop making our children out to be political pawns in a game they didn't sign up to play. The mask is most certainly, as well as the vaccine, a political tool. The Omicron variant is being used by globalists, big pharma, and governments as yet another power grab, bringing with it more authoritarianism, restrictions, further eroding of our rights, and destroying families all across the world. Wake up. If you continue to comply, they will continue to restrict. This will never be over. There will always be a new variant. There will always be ways to keep you in fear. This is tyranny, and you cannot comply your way out of it. Tyranny is defined as an arbitrary and unrestrained exercise of power or an abuse of authority. This is tyranny.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Adriana Ragland.
I wanted to use my time tonight to speak to any parents in the audience and those of you who are online that may be struggling with everything that's going on to our school systems. I want to say to you, if you have a gut feeling, listen to it, because you're right. There is something going on that's wrong in our schools. But do not feel like public school is your only answer. We have a huge community of homeschool families here in our community to help you and support you. My kids are thriving and actually enjoying school now. We have done lessons on the beach, on the pier. We make the world, our community, our classroom. We have taken field trips to the zoo, to Williamsburg, and even to the Nautilus with our homeschool group. My kids lack nothing, and neither will yours. Don't feel overwhelmed because the school system has told you that you can't do this and that they are the only ones that can provide your child with adequate education. You can do it. You always were and always will be your child's greatest influence and teacher. They just don't want you to recognize this, because when you take back educating your children, they lose their control and their precious funding. Your child is the only thing standing between the government paycheck and these folks' bank account. They don't care about your child. Farley and Davy sold themselves long ago. As a good friend of mine once said, "Audie, you never set a sapling out in a hurricane." Well, parents, this is the storm of our lives. Are you going to save your children from the destruction? Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andriana. Jaden Payne.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jaden. I am not only a student here at First Flight High School, but I am a member of the National Honor Society and the National Technical Honor Society. It is a great honor that I get to be up here tonight. I would like to start off by saying thank you for not only the Board of Education, but the staff here tonight for taking the time to just make sure our students here are safe. Not only does this affect me, but this also affects my family members and people around the community as a whole. One of the most important things about these meetings is definitely public comment, and I feel like I should take this opportunity to mention something that I've noticed within the past 12 years? No, wait, I was also 16 years, sorry. No, I'm not even, school career. I'm sorry, anxiety stinks.
You're doing a good job.
So one of the biggest problems here on the Outer Banks is substance abuse. And recently, we've lost one of our students thanks to it. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout my elementary school, middle school, and high school career is a lack of talk about this sort of thing. We have, yes, the DARE program, but we've only had one elementary school that has really exercised that very well, and that's N.C.G.S Elementary School. From students that I've talked to, Kitty Hawk and First Flight haven't really talked about this much. And we do have stuff about, talked about it in stuff like health classes and stuff. I want to at least give a push towards this notion and ask for DARE program to be taught in more schools, and not only in just elementary schools, but in other schools as well. Because this was one of the first programs that I was exposed to as a kid, and not only has this helped me in keeping myself away from substance abuse, it could help others too. Another suggestion I have, again, take this with a grain of salt, is to implement more power into peer power. They're a really good program too. I want to thank you guys again, and thank you for dealing with my anxiety. And thank you so much for putting in student account.
Thank you, Jaden. Next, we'll hear from Gino Elko.
Thank you for your time and for listening. I'd like to discuss numbers and perspectives. As of January 3rd, North Carolina COVID hospitalizations were 2,722. North Carolinians not hospitalized for COVID is 10,488,278. Perspective, only 0.025% of people in North Carolina are COVID hospitalized. As of January 3rd, Dare County new cases were 243. Of that, 134 were vaccinated and 53 were boosted. Over half of the cases were vaccinated and 1 out of 5 were boosted. Perspective, with a population of 37,243 in Dare County, these cases are less than 0.7% of the Dare County population. As of December 17th, right before Christmas break, there were 64 cases in Dare County schools. There are approximately 5,388 students, 398 teachers, and 328 other school staff. Perspective, that's a total of 6,114 people. You are masking over 6,000 people for 1.04 cases. What might a parent's perspective be when they see the conclusive data on several federal government sites and research that children are of no risk? Parents see unlawful quarantining of healthy children. Did you know that it is unlawful to quarantine anyone without a Chapter 13A order from the health department for each individual to be quarantined? We see parents that want to mask their children can freely. We see that parents that don't want to mask their children are obligated to do so in order for their children to attend public school. We see ESSER funds received, and we see that to receive those funds, a school district must every 6 months submit a plan showing that how they will maintain health and safety of students and educators and staff. Benjamin Franklin said, "People who are willing to trade freedom for temporary security deserve neither and will lose both." It's already happening. We are into the third school year and nothing has changed. More parents don't speak out because they don't have the power, and they don't. Children don't refuse the mask because they know they're not allowed to. Teachers don't speak out for fear of losing their jobs. In December's meeting, Ms. Balance commented that you're not voting to keep children from sick, but to keep them from being quarantined. Therefore, you are voting to avoid a bad policy. And is there a plan to send out another survey to parents and teachers? It's been 4 months. The last survey showed over 60% of teachers and parents want optional masks. 85% of your teachers are vaccinated, but they're still in masks. I've been in several county buildings over the past few months, and people are not wearing masks, including the health department. Massive hypocrisy in Dare County. I guess vaccines protect you in those buildings, but not in the schools. If you're interested in what people who you elected you, please consider sending out another survey. Parents have the right to choose medical intervention for their children. I believe the BOE is between a rock and a hard place, but you've put yourself there by allowing influences that shouldn't be there.
Thank you, Gina. Matt Chavez.
Hi, my name is Matt Chavez. I'm a parent of 3 children in the Dare County schools, 2 in the dual language immersion program at Kitty Hawk, one of whom you heard from last month, and a 3-year-old receiving IEP services. Excuse me. I'm also an emergency medicine physician who works here locally as well as throughout Eastern North Carolina. I'm here tonight to say thank you not only to my children's teachers, but all the teachers and staff who make Dare County schools run so smoothly. To Dr. Farley, our community wants to hail healthcare workers as heroes, but I would venture to say that Dare County schools have kept our county going just as much. To the Board of Education, continuing to allow these meetings to be a platform of spread and hatred and misinformation does nothing but hurt our communities. I implore you to be part of the solution. Please continue to put the health and safety of our students and teachers and staff as your #1 priority. COVID is real. COVID is very real in Dare County. We are providing care to an ever-increasing number of very sick patients. Our hospitals are full, our surrounding hospitals are full, elective surgeries are being canceled to make more room for patients. We in healthcare are trying our best, but it must be a team effort. While you are charged with making decisions to support and further my children's education, I am charged with keeping this community healthy. Working in silos contributes to poor outcomes, a negative in both of our professions. And I'm happy to help assist in breaking down any barriers we can to continue to ensure Dare County schools provide top education in the state of North Carolina. We are all here tonight for the students, and I want to close with one of my oldest daughter's favorite school activities from December. Her 2nd grade dual language immersion class became Pen Pal Secret Santas with a 2nd grade dual language immersion class from Manio Elementary. They exchanged letters throughout the month. They even got to speak by a video chat. She was able to meet someone new, work on her oral and written Spanish language skills, and have fun. As a parent, having a child excited about learning is one of the best possible outcomes, and we thank Dare County Schools and dual language immersion for believing in that as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Kate Serino.
Good evening. My name is Kate Serino. So we keep hearing this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Even our own local media pushes this narrative. In a recent OBX Voice article, Mark Jerkovitz defined vaccinated as those who've received 2 doses of Pfizer, Moderna, or 1 of J&J. This is not completely accurate. In fact, listen carefully. The CDC definition of fully vaccinated is those who are 2 weeks beyond their final dose. For clarity, let's dig into some examples. So Jack gets his first Moderna vaccine and dies a week later from an unfortunate adverse reaction. He is classified by health officials as an unvaccinated death. He had 1 dose. Jill gets her 2nd Pfizer vaccine and 13 days later tests positive. She is classified as an unvaccinated COVID case because she's less than 2 full weeks post her last dose. This is flagrant data manipulation, folks, and some might call it fraud. Does it strike you as odd that citizens are being offered free donuts, lottery money, burgers, marijuana, and beer for vaccine compliance across the country in the name of public health? Does it seem outrageous that PCR tests that we've relied upon for 2 years have now been pulled by the FDA and CDC for failure to differentiate between COVID and the flu? The flu just didn't magically disappear last year, guys. Does it seem suspect that the quarantine metrics keep changing in an increasingly bizarre manner? The current toolkit rewards compliance. The fully vaxxed and boosted have no quarantine imposed, despite their well-documented ability to both contract and spread virus. And is it not curious to you that the FDA and CDC wish to wait 75 years to publish data related to their vaccine studies? Folks, there's something really, truly ugly going on here. And if you still don't understand the bigger plan, please research Agenda 21, the Great Reset, or Rockefeller's Operation Lockstep. This has never been about a virus. Dare County, wake up. Yet this board continues to actively participate in the fraud and violate established law. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "To ignore evil is to become accomplice to it." And folks, you are indeed accomplices at this time. Under 21 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 50, 23, and 24, it is illegal to coerce a citizen to participate in an experiment. And I will remind you that masks and current vaccines are all EUA experimental devices. This is how the Nuremberg Code was folded into federal law. Furthermore, under 18 U.S. Code Section 2331, it is illegal to coerce a population. This is a felony, carries a 99-year prison term. Forced masking to obtain a public education is coercion. The longer this lawlessness continues, the more votes that are recorded on the permanent record, the more emails that are collected, the more affidavits that are compiled, the stronger a class action lawsuit becomes. This board is lawless. It is beyond time that you find courage to stand, courage to lead, courage to follow established law, because ultimately you will be held to account. Thank you for your time this evening. For legal updates, please visit daretoshareobx.org or follow us on Facebook.
Thank you, Kate. Tom Serino.
Hello, everybody. Great news. I think I may have found a solution on our masking issues in the schools, especially since parents and teachers have already voted to make it an optional last year. As you all know, the CEO of the board and yourselves have chosen a plan, we'll call it a contract, right, that will reward Dare County school systems with $7.5 million plus. Let's allocate some of these resources to purchase restaurant-style tables and chairs to replace the desks in the school. Now, it might sound a little odd, but think about it. Over the last year, all these students, parents, teachers have been dining in these indoor environments without having to wear a mask sitting. Now, the classes run about the same amount of time as they're eating in these restaurants. Now, if the County Board of Health feels it's safe enough for the restaurants, then they'll easily approve the mask policy for these new tables and chairs. Seems like a good swap. Now, I do realize that the students will have to wear their masks when they stand and go up to the restroom or the next class, but they're used to those procedures at the restaurants they eat in town. Let's have a show of hands to have our school join the rest of the county. Anybody? No? Okay. Well, how about this? Or you can show Mr. Farley and his team that you disapprove of his original plan that was presented to you. Cancel that ridiculous contract and send the money back. You have had over a year to do your homework on other options. Now, I know it's confusing. No one's blaming you, but they're running out of time, okay? The citizens of Dare County now have the opportunity to hold you accountable. If I was sitting where you are right now, I would be holding him and his team accountable to get the school district out of this contractual mess it's got itself into. Ask yourselves, why did he not develop a plan custom for this small district, instead taking a prepackaged plan from the government with all the strings? This is an easy fix. Is he working for Dare County schools or to appease NCDPI for future career advancements? I don't know. Someone needs to ask him. Remember, it is very easy to make the correct decision when you do not care who gets the credit or how to personally profit from it. Now, which board member is brave enough to be a leader tonight to make the motion supporting that they will support the will of the people's original 60-40 vote by the parents and teachers to make masks optional? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Melanie Brewer.
Here we all are again, back doing the same rodeo, same hamster wheel. So I did want to say there was one positive thing that I saw tonight, which was the internship program. That's actually a really cool idea, not encouraging all the kids to go to college, putting some of the kids in that don't want to go to college and letting them find themselves. Great idea. I'm really proud of you. The staff and I guess the Board of Education was involved in that. It's a little ridiculous that we are here yet again. You guys have been presented with all of the information. You've been presented with all of the alternate news media. You've been given professional advice from people like me, a registered nurse. This was my previous ID when I still believed in the medical industry. I worked in high-risk obstetrics. I worked in ICU as well as hospice. All three places have a high turnover of airborne positive patients. During my time in education as a nurse, I don't know what happened with that guy back there, but all the masks y'all are wearing, all of the masks the kids are wearing, all of that spreads contamination. So I have some numbers for you because I was kind of interested. There are several countries around the world that did not mask students during this pandemic. UK was one of them. They had 13,600,000 positive COVID cases. 150,000 people died. That's 0.9% death rate for that grouping of, for those people that tested positive for COVID. Sweden was another place. 1,350,000 had COVID and 15,000 died. So that's also 0.98% of people that died that were testing positive for COVID. The United States had 56 million people test positive for COVID. 820,000 died. Guess what? That's 0.98%. What are the chances that we have masked these children abusively for the last 2 years, and our death rate numbers are exactly the same as the other countries that chose not to abuse their children and to allow parental choice, which should be our choice because, again, here we are paying for y'all's salary, we are paying for their salary and the teacher's salary that works so hard, and we are apparently paying for their salary to be here and threaten these parents and be this enforcement. I don't know why we have cops here. Have we been that violent? Have you received death threats or something? Because I know I'm not sending them. I know that group that I'm associated with isn't sending them. So why are these cops still here? He told me I had to wear my mask. I wore them as flippin' earrings tonight because this is absolutely ridiculous. They do nothing but spread germs and silence the children. You have removed their autonomy. You have removed the autonomy of the teachers. You have told those teachers time and again that they have to do whatever program you're installing, and they are no longer allowed to teach what they feel that they should be teaching, and they're the ones with the flippin' education. This is getting out of control, and it needs to stop now. I'm a little bit disappointed in the parents, the 60% and probably closer to 80 at this point, that don't believe that our kids should be masking because we know that it's not working and we know that vaccines aren't working. Why aren't the parents in this county standing up? Have a great day.
Thank you, Melanie. Hedges? Did I say that correctly? I hope.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hadley Hedges, and I'm a senior here at First Flight High School. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the student body and as a member of N.C.G.S. and share my opinion about the school year. I would like to start off by saying how thankful I am to be back in the building for in-person learning. It is nice to be back in classrooms with my friends and peers. It just feels normal. As a senior, I'm sure most, if not all, other kids in my graduating class are just as grateful to be having a typical senior year. Between in-person classes, clubs, sports, and other school-related activities, life feels back to normal, and I couldn't be more thankful. I would also like to give a huge shout out to all the teachers and staff at First Flight High School, as well as other Dare County schools, for how hard they are working and for the time and effort they are investing in us as students. Thank you all faculty and staff members for how dedicated you are to giving us the best education possible despite these circumstances. As students, we can really tell how passionate our teachers are about caring for us, and we appreciate all the time and attention that goes into everyday lessons and activities. Through the past 2 years of COVID, we students have learned not to take anything for granted. Overall, I'm very happy with how this year is going, and I appreciate that you, as educators and the Education Board, are doing and have done for us. I hope everyone stays happy and healthy and has a good remaining semester and year. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadley. Megan Kendall.
Good evening. I'd like to start with a quote from John F. Kennedy. For a nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. And first, I would like to start off by thanking God. Without him, none of us would be here. And for the blessings that he has bestowed upon my family. I believe health is the greatest wealth, and so I'm very thankful that my family has maintained our health throughout this crisis. And I hope that I can honor God with my words today because I do recognize that Christians can often be the #1 cause of people turning away from God. So I understand it's probably hard for parents to get here because I saw the pickup line as I was walking in, and I had to rush here. My husband gets off work pretty early, so other people don't attend because they don't think it matters. And that's actually true, unfortunately. I don't really think my credentials matter, except that I'm not just some random person off the street. I have over 25 years of volunteer and teaching experience. I've been teaching virtually for 4 years, very successfully. I understand the unique and diverse needs of the children right now. I've been teaching children worldwide for the past 4 years. So I understand this role that you're trying to put on the teachers of the social emotional counselors. And I just want to let all the back to my history lesson. They're not public servants. Just so everybody knows, if you study history, the United States is a corporation. We can go back to 1930s, but you can all look that up yourself. But this is a corporate structure, just like the towns are incorporated. They want to make a profit, right? We all can figure that out on our own. So I actually taught for a Chinese company for a while where I was required to use only approved maps by the Chinese Ministry of Education. I couldn't mention Tiananmen Square to my students. So I understand censorship better than anyone in this room because I taught Chinese students from my living room, okay? I don't teach for that company anymore. They actually, China doesn't employ Western teachers anymore, and they are taking stringent measures to get their kids off screens while we're embracing transhumanism. But anyways, I'm gonna get back to my point. They don't work for us, these people right here. Just so everyone is aware, unfortunately, that's the structure of America now, and we have to understand that corporate structure that they are doing business. A lot of people don't subscribe to allopathic medicine. We need to respect that part of our community. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. That concludes public comment. Next, I would now like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Farley for announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I'd like to start by recognizing Jody Mitchum, who's the principal at First Flight Elementary School. Ms. Mitchum, Dr. Mitchum, has announced her retirement, and she's had an outstanding career in Dare County schools. So we think Dr. Mitchum should be retiring June 30th. Next, there's not a ribbon cutting ceremony, but a wire cutting ceremony to help celebrate the opening of the Dare Electrical Lab tomorrow at COA campus. Excited for that new program. Next, a couple of certificates. Chairman Tauber mentioned in his opening comments about our graduation rate, and the State Board of Education has recognized Dare County Schools as a top 10 school district and highest graduation rate across the state. We've also received an award for the Board of Education from the North Carolina School Board Association. It's called the Silver Bell Award. The board has required professional training, and the award is for whole board training presented to the Dare County Board of Education last year for training excellence and commitment during the 2020-2021 North Carolina School Board Association Academy Year of the Association Academy of School Boardsmanship. So congratulations to the board. And then lastly, I want to recognize some personnel. Samantha Baranek is an employee here at First Flight High School. She's also in our Emerging Leaders group, outstanding ITF. And Samantha was selected as one of 8 ITF's instructional technology facilitators across the state to serve on the North Carolina Digital Learning Plan Work Group, which will begin the process of rewriting the North Carolina Digital Learning Plan and the accompanying rubric. Also like to highlight 5 ladies who are working in our LEGO leagues. So as you know, we were afforded a grant last year that we've begun this year in our 5 elementary schools. We have LEGO leagues in each of the 5 elementary schools. Christy Spinella from Kitty Hawk and Kristen Gray from Cape Hatteras Elementary School are actually presenting at the North Carolina NC.Ts conference upcoming. NC.Ts stands for the North Carolina Technology and Education Society, and they do wonderful digital-based professional development across the state. Also want to recognize Charlotte Hester at First Flight Elementary School, Lori O'Neill, who's at Nags Head Elementary School, and Marley Boyd, who's the librarian at Manual Elementary School, working with students 2 days a week. And then if the board wants to have a little fun and see some kids in action doing really neat things, problem solving, building a lot of things, stop into our Lego League programs after school 2 days a week, and we can get you those dates. And then lastly, speaking of great ITFs, we've got an ITF librarian duo. Lori O'Neill, who's the assistant over at Nags Head, and Chelsea Brantley have been named the keynote speakers in a week-long professional development showcasing instructional partnerships at NCAT this spring and later in May. So congratulations to our outstanding staff. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. We will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes the personnel consent agenda and minutes of the December 14th, 2021 special and regular meeting sessions. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Somebody?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, David. Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Balance. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we will hear reports and items of information. The first report will be provided by Dr. Sheila Davies, Director of Health and Human Services for Dare County.
This one right there progresses forward. That big.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening. Okay. Just going to go through a general update tonight, highlight some information about the Omicron variant, Dare County data, regional data, school data, the isolation and quarantine guidance changes, some vaccine information, and then, of course, available for your questions. So just quickly, some updates on what's out there with the Omicron variant. As you're well aware, you've heard it's highly transmissible, likely at least 2 to 3 times as contagious as Delta. It's rapidly spreading. It's estimated to be at least 95% of the variant that's circulating in the southeastern region. In a couple of slides, I'll show you data that's been gathered from Vidant Health specifically to this variant. Preliminary data suggests that it is less severe. It affects the upper respiratory tract, more of the nose and the throat, which is what we're seeing with presentation, a lot of cold-like symptoms, as compared to what we saw with the Delta variant, which was more in the lower respiratory tract, more affecting the lungs. What they're seeing with the Omicron variant is a decreased protection from primary series of vaccination or past infection, and this is what's guiding this is what's prompting some of the guidance changes that have come out from the CDC and N.C.G.S. So boosters do provide increased protection. A COVID-19 vaccine booster restores vaccine effectiveness against infection to about 75%, and boosters reduce the risk of hospitalization by 81%. Some of you who listened to Dr. Betsy Tilson, this is information that she had shared recently in the State Board of Education meeting. What they're also seeing is some decreased protection from some of the therapeutics that are out there, decreased effectiveness of some of the monoclonal antibodies, and some of the other antivirals fortunately still appear to be effective. So really this Omicron is what's prompting the mass spread of the mass spread of the virus that we're seeing. Numbers of cases in Dare County is mirroring what you're seeing across the country and the state. Just this past week, this is our current dashboard as of today. Just this past week, there were 799 new positive cases. 613 of those were residents, 186 were non-residents.
As of today, there are 289 active resident cases. This definition is consistent with the new guidance now with isolation, so these are individuals who are still either symptomatic or within their 5-day isolation period. When I was here last month, that was 10 days. There are currently 14 residents hospitalized. 35 out of the 289 active cases are Dare County students and 12 are staff. This slide is from epidemiologist Bill Cleve from the Vidant Medical Health System. And basically, I know it's a little difficult to see, but what you're seeing is the progression where Delta was the predominant variant for close to 19 weeks, and in the past couple of weeks, it's now Omicron. Omicron's represented by the red. Prior to that, that tealish color was Delta. Roughly in excess of 92% of the cases that were sequenced in the past couple of weeks are now the Omicron. So just showing how that variant's moving. The next slide, also from Vidant Health, is showing the percent increase of positivity. So one of the things that you look at when you're trying to analyze the data when it's cases is not looking at just the cases in and of itself. You know, are cases increasing just because you're testing more, or are cases increasing because they're increasing? And that's why you look at the percent positivity, which is what this slide represents. And so of cases, of testing done up to current, roughly 37% of the cases that have been tested in the Vidant system, it's a 37% positivity rate. We reported today in Dare County about a 43 positivity rate, but of course, if you'll recall, our numbers include both residents and non-residents as far as testing. And certainly we recognize that that's just based on the information that's reported to us. You know, we don't know the number of home tests, so certainly that denominator could change, as well as the numerator, but those aren't reported. They're not what's captured in the data. This is today's school dashboard. You see there's 54 active cases among students. That number is different than the number that I shared with you as far as positive cases, because some of those are excluded at this point for symptoms. They may choose not to get tested, or they may be waiting their test. So they're excluded from school because they have symptoms consistent, but they're either waiting their 5 days or they'll get tested and have an alternate diagnosis and can return. And that those 54 cases, in addition to that, there's 84 that are quarantined. A large number of those quarantines are related to out-of-school activity. And so, you know, community identification as a direct contact. You know, I think when you look at the dashboard and the school picture right now, the schools are doing a phenomenal job. When you look in the community and see in a given week that there are 799 reported positive cases, and you see where your school levels are, I think Dare County Schools is really, really doing well. So I wanted to touch base on the changes, because there's been a lot of changes since I was with you in December. And again, these changes were put forth by the CDC and N.C.G.S based on what they're seeing with the Omicron variant. So first, with respect to isolation, this was a dramatic change. The good news is it allows for the school environment, children and staff to return much sooner. Instead of the 10-day required isolation, it's been reduced to 5 days. And then when you return, you're to wear a mask for the additional 5 days. So it's really simple. It's a flat 5 and 5 now. As long as for the 5 days that your symptoms have started to improve, and of course you're fever-free. You have to be fever-free for at least 24 hours. The guidance changes for quarantine are noted here as well, because there's been a significant change. Instead of the standard 14-day with the post-7-day or post-10-day option, quarantine is now reduced to 5 days. If you're identified as a direct contact, and that definition has not changed, but if you're identified as a direct contact, you're to quarantine for 5 full days with an additional 5 days of masking. There are still 3 exceptions for quarantine. Individuals who are vaccinated against COVID-19 are exempt. For anyone 18 and older, this includes boosters. But for your student population, it includes it's just the 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. Another exemption is people who tested positive for COVID within the last 90 days. And the third exemption is for people who are consistently masked, so both individuals, the one who is positive and the one who is exposed. The one thing that has been removed from the guidance is, and we talked a lot about this last month, so I think it's important to bring up, is the antibody testing, the positive antibody. And I know I responded to your questions today understanding that. So the data is showing that the natural immunity, the immunity you get from a prior infection is not as strong as it was with the other variants. And so the rationale behind not allowing the antibody test is you don't have a time associated with the antibody test. It doesn't say that your infection was just 2 months ago or your infection was 3 months ago. So since they know that you don't have as much infection from, since they know you don't have as much protection from a prior infection, the certainty they have with the reason they're allowing the test within 90 days is a very specific timeline. They know that you were positive within those 3 months. So that's the rationale that it was removed. I didn't have anything to do with the removal. It's just explaining that's the guidance. So. Last slide, just another data point is just where we are with vaccines. We certainly continue to provide vaccinations. It's recommended for 5 years and over. The boosters are now recommended for 12 and over if you've been at least 5 months since you received your primary series. A question that was asked earlier is where do we stand with vaccination numbers? Roughly 70% of Dare County staff are vaccinated. And as far as the youth in Dare County, 23% of ages 5 to 11 are vaccinated, and 44% of ages 12 to 17 are vaccinated. So that's the data that I wanted to share with you. I'm certainly available to answer any questions you may have.
Sheila, can you talk to us a little bit about how the delay now in getting results are impacting timelines with the 5 days?
Sure. So because of the just sheer volume of testing, the urgent care, who's historically been doing the large lion's share of the testing in Dare County, the 2 urgent care centers affiliated with the Outer Banks Hospital, right now, they are combined in just one site in Kitty Hawk, and that's due to just some staffing challenges and resource challenges. They keep getting in the cartridges to be able to do the rapid PCR test. However, they get limited supply. Sometimes they run out. They use those primarily for symptomatic individuals. If you get tested and you're asymptomatic, your test would be sent off to their lab in Greenville. On days when they run out of those tests, everything gets sent out. And because it's such a large number of send-outs, instead of getting those results back in 24 hours, sometimes it can take 2 to 3 days to get those results back. We, just this past Monday, partnered with them and Mako Medical to start providing drive-through testing. They're located over at the Parks and Recreation facility. They are going to be set up, it's a private lab company. They're set up there Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. They'll be there for the next 3 months, and this will help alleviate some of the drive over, or the volume at the urgent care centers. They really want to focus at the urgent care centers on those who are sick and need medical attention. So if you just need a test and you're managing your health well and you're managing your illness well, then the drive-through option is a great option. So hopefully that will help their throughput. Mako says up to 48 hours for test results. It could be sooner, but they said that's when they feel confident they can tell the public that it wouldn't be longer than that. So if you've got a 5-day quarantine or isolation period now, and we're not getting the results for 3 days, a lot of that time is gone. So, we reach out as soon as we're notified. We notify you all. But there are times when someone, by the time we get a result, may be finished, because it's based on when your symptoms start, not necessarily even when you test. So if someone was sick for a day or two, went and got tested, and then we didn't get the result for 2 or 3 days, they may be completed the 5-day of their quarantine. So again, it speaks to me, I'm still really pleased with the numbers we're seeing in Dare County with respect to overall compared to the community spread where it is in the school system.
There was 2 amendments to the toolkit last week, and the second came out on Friday about 3:30 p.m. And part of that was promoting the viability or promoting a test-to-stay program for school districts that are still requiring masks. How viable is it? Do you see is it an option in Dare County? And can you explain to everyone exactly, what the purpose is?
Sure. So the state back in August offered the opportunity initially to have some pilot sites to study. A test-to-stay program is where you provide on-site rapid testing, and if a student is identified as a direct contact or they're symptomatic, you can go get tested at school. If you test negative, you stay. And so they first ran studies with some pilot schools to look at was the rate of infection increasing in those schools, and the data came back, I think I shared some of that with you all, very positive with this program. So schools have been signing up who are interested in having on-site testing. Where it stands now with the availability of that, initially when the signups were happening, there were third-party vendors that could come on site and do that testing. Right now, there does not appear to be readily available resources for that. Schools can still create a test-to-stay program. They're calling it an independent program at this point, where the testing would need to be done by the school, or the school could provide testing kits where the parent could do the testing, or the child could go off-site and get tested. That's not that feasible right now based on the turnaround time. So, the advantage is, especially if you're able to rule out that it's not COVID with a test right then and there, a negative antigen test, then this child's not missing school at all. I think if you want to pursue that direction, it's basically just a lot of discussion on what logistically planning for how you would operate, who's going to review the results at your school site. Sandy Kensel and I have spoken a little bit. The school nurses can't be that person. They're already taxed with what they're doing with all the additional COVID work that they've been doing. It doesn't have to be read by a nurse. I mean, the tests are really clear if it's positive or not. But there's some logistical planning that needs to happen. Right now, the test-to-stay program is only allowed for schools who have a mask mandate. So just something to think about if you're, whatever you're considering, is that plan has to be associated with a mask requirement still in place. There are 7 school sites right now that are in a pilot study program for the state through this ABC Collaborative is who's doing this study. Those are mask optional school districts who are under study for this test to stay. So depending on what data comes out of that, there could be guidance changes and there could be other options for schools. But at this point, it's that test to stay is linked with a mask requirement. So.
And I'm not suggesting that we should pursue this. The board entertained this, actually, as Sheila mentioned, back in the fall when they were running pilots. Just emphasizing the fact that this is a push now from the state. The other thing that's come out, which is of no cost to the district if they're available, I'm not sure about quantities across the state, is we can submit a request for N95 masks for all staff members at no cost. So these are kind of paired together.
And Superintendent, also, if you were going in the independent, the testing supplies, now, right now, they're in short, the availability is not where it needs to be, but when that is restored, those supplies can be provided by the state. So that would not be an out-of-pocket cost.
Any questions further questions?
Yeah, I have. Go ahead. You go ahead. Thanks for coming, Sheila. I appreciate it. Do you have any idea what % of the kids are healthy quarantined, meaning, they were quarantined, but they never were sick?
I don't have a set percentage on that. I would say it's low. We have seen certainly some spread from a school contact to a school contact, but overall it is low. Okay. But the nice thing right now is so are your overall quarantines, with only having 85 quarantine, and that day shortened the timeline. But yeah, overall it's low.
First, I want to tell you that I have studied this toolkit upside down and inside out, and as soon as I got it figured out, they changed it, and then I got that figured out, and then they changed it again.
It's crazy. It's been a whirlwind since
Yeah.
January or December 27th with
And
all the public
I would
health
also like to
changes.
say I have a whole new renewed respect for what you have had to deal with as far as what the state is putting on you, because there's typos in this thing that are, and contradictions that are really unacceptable to me for a state that's got attorneys and everything else that should be reviewing this before they put it out. That being said, I do have some questions. First, how can they determine from the test whether it's an Omicron or a Delta?
So you can at the point of testing. They are doing sequencing of samples, so not every specimen's getting sequenced, but like the slide that I showed you from Vidant. So the samples, any positive sample gets sent there, then they take a random sample of that and then test. So you can't tell if your particular test was Omicron or not.
So all of that's determined on the back end at the lab?
Correct.
Okay. On those million questions that I sent you, and I apologize for all that, and I thank you for the late. Where it says the public, the state had, at the state meeting on Wednesday, several of the board members had asked questions about the natural immunity, and you had answered the question that the updated guidance removed the positive antibody testing exemption, but in the ridiculous chart that we have, sorry, I can't help it. So if they do a home test, they would have to have a 90-day test from a testing facility for the 90-day exemption.
Right. Now, it can be an antigen from a testing facility, but yes.
Right. So they would have to go and if they think they have it and they want to be exempt after the 5 days, they have to go, or exempt for the 90 days, they would have to go get that test and make sure that they tested positive to show that they were within the 90 days.
Right. And the only exception, and you know that toolkit, is if you are part of a test to stay school site and you had that testing there and you had someone proctoring that test, then that would also be acceptable for the 90 days.
The test to stay, if we're in the test to stay program. Okay. Shoo, I might have some more. I just got to think about this a minute. I'm like all over the place. Okay. I think I've got pretty much where I'm at. Again, I thank you for your time in coming and talking with us. I know this is, like I said, I've studied this 6 ways from Sunday, and it still doesn't make a bit of sense to me. I might be going to Raleigh next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I guess
go ahead.
I just have a couple statements. This is extremely frustrating for everybody because it seems like every time there's some glimmer of hope, the storm cloud comes back in. The only glimmer of hope that I see in the situation that we're in now is that it's a blessing that this latest strain doesn't have the same pack as Delta. So in one regard, this, under my way of thinking, could be another step that gets us closer to herd vaccine, where more people have it and we're getting past it. But it just seems like what we're using as a guide still seems faulty too. And this is just me speaking, because it's extremely frustrating to look at parents. Well, here's part of the frustration. Through all the schools we went today, we saw all the kids in the classroom. The kids seem to be functioning fine. Do they want to wear the mask? No. Do the teachers, are they jumping up and down to wear the mask? No. But it seems to be an area where there's compliance to the greater good is keeping kids in front of the teachers, face to face. The bad side of it is, it seems like we can never get to a point to get on the other side of it. And that's what's extremely frustrating to me, is because it's almost like you can't win or lose, and that you almost have, something has to change, and I don't know what it is. I don't know where the breaking point is, but
I get your frustration. I do. And I know the healthcare providers in Dare County and across the state and nation get your frustration. Unfortunately, it's a novel virus and variants happen. Where I do still think that there's hope is there's some indication from starting to look at nations who saw this before we did. Omicron is as steeply as it started rising, it started dropping. We're not there yet. Some indication is that the peak may be the end of January, 1st of February. So I still have hope that as we head into the early spring, that we are going to be in a much better position than we are now. And some of those things you were thinking about in December, you can be revisiting with those discussions then. Unfortunately, we saw this coming. We knew this. We were concerned about this for so many different reasons. One, the word of the variant and the news of the variant, but two, we're coming off of the holiday season where there were lots of gatherings. It's starting to get cold. It's we're indoor, and then viruses seem to do better in cold, dry weather. So, I mean, it is the situation we're in, but I get it's frustrating for everyone. There's so much fatigue over this, understandably, but it's just where we are right now, and hopefully we can do the best we can to get over it and have brighter days ahead.
yeah, and just the last thing I want to say, the other thing that seems frustrating to me is even using the word vaccine. When I think of vaccine, I think of like a polio vaccine or something like that. One and you're done. It seems like it's just boost, 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 and it's extremely hard.
And I get that frustration too. There are different types of vaccines. So there are some that are, designed to eradicate. The flu is an annual vaccine. So there are some that are there to, they modify those to predict the strain that's in front of you. And so, but I get it. We sure all wanted to be well beyond this at this point.
Any other questions or comments? I do have a comment and some questions, but I share the frustration of many of the Board of Education members here, because we started out with the virus and we were told to lock down basically. Then we had the Delta virus and we were told to lock down again. Now we're told that we have the Omicron virus and to lock down again. And I'm looking at, where's the future? Where's the next one coming along? And that's not a question, that's a comment, okay? Because I don't see any end in sight here. I really don't. But now I'm going to move on to my questions. I got the original Pfizer shots, okay? And January of 2021 and February of 21. Now we have booster shots. What's the difference of the composition of the booster shot versus the original Pfizer shots?
There's no change in composition.
No difference. So I wanted to ask another question. How long have we been identifying the Delta variant and the Omicron variant?
Omicron, we just started seeing the presence of it right at the end of December in North Carolina. Delta had been, prior to that, the dominant variant for at least 19 weeks prior to that.
And so the original shot and the booster shot were for the original virus. Is that correct? Not necessarily for the Delta or the...
Right, they didn't know about Delta. When
I
a variant
understand
comes
that.
on, they didn't, yeah, it's new.
But they're still touting the booster shot as a guard against the Delta or Omicron? Or why are they asking us to get the shot if it's basically for the original virus condition?
The data is showing that the booster is providing additional protection.
And what studies were those? Or what studies showed that the booster shot has a positive impact on the spread of the Omicron variant?
I can send you that information, the links that I have from the state.
Joe, I looked at that on the CDC. I believe it was on the CDC, and they said that the booster shot gave an additional brought your immunity back up to 75%.
That's, if we've identified it in December, it just seems hard to calculate.
Well, that's when it came here.
Right.
But when they do their studies, they're looking at globally. And so we were not one of the first countries to experience the outbreak. So they're looking at data and studies and what's happening in trends where it first emerged. And I don't remember where the timeline of that.
I have, one of the speakers gave us an information, a did you know form. And I'm just asking some questions here. And it says here, according to CDC, the death rate for children under 19 from COVID-19 is statistically 0. Is that true?
Well, there certainly have been deaths from COVID-19 of individuals under 19. I don't have the percentage, but I think it would be a fallacy to say that there have been 0.
Okay. And those children that have died from COVID, do they have other issues, health-related issues that you know of? Don't know? Okay. Again, according to this document here, it says, according to CDC, the COVID vaccines will not prevent infection or transmission of COVID-19. Is that true?
Well, there's no vaccine that's going to be 100% effective. So there's probably a statement on their website specifically related to that, is that no vaccine is going to provide 100% effectiveness from acquiring the virus.
Okay. There's another statement here, too. According to CDC, vaccinated people are not less infectious than unvaccinated people. It continues to say vaccinated people acquire and transmit COVID-19 just as easily and as often as unvaccinated people.
We are seeing spread in both, correct?
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions.
I have one more quick question. At the last meeting, you spoke to us about how there was seemed to be a 3-month or 90-day trend of up and down. And I know you don't know this but can you tell approximately where we might be in that 3-month trend? Or what other places are seeing, like where other places that have already peaked?
Sure. So where the state has shared that they are expecting the peak to be late January into first week or so of February is based on that information. So, we again started seeing Omicron at the end of December. If that's the case and we start declining in February, then yeah, I think that still that 3-month, 90-day trajectory is it's still on target. But that's based on the information from following other countries. And
Any other questions or comments from board members? Thank you, Dr. Davies.
thank you.
The next 3 reports will be provided by Dr. Farley. The reports will include updates to the NC Public Health Toolkit, an update on behalf of the DEF Teacher Housing Task Force, and information about the N.C.G.S. strategic plan. John, do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Board of Education, it would be redundant for me to go through the toolkit updates because Dr. Davies covered all those in her report. But we did discuss this, the only other update would have been the test to stay option. So that content's been covered. I think we should just keep it moving if the board's in agreement. We are. Awesome. Thank you. Next is, as you know, Barbara Davidson, the Executive Director of the Dare Education Foundation, did a presentation at our last Board of Education meeting. We said we'd bring an update, come back to the board here in January. So the Affordable Housing Task Force, as you know, the board is interested in the concept of possibly expanding Run Hill Ridge housing for teachers, and the board is very interested in seeking out teacher housing on Roanoke Island. The Dare Education Foundation, following that meeting, has come back to say they want to still study on some of these concepts and get some more information for the board before they come before the board for a potential vote. So they are looking to get an estimated loan and interest rate from Town Bank, begin discussions with potential builders about the anticipated cost of the project, review the details of the project with the entire board, and then meet again as a joint task force to develop a recommendation to the Board of Education. Brief update. Questions from the board? Okay. Next is our DARE 2023 strategic plan. We can pull that up, Dr. Parker. So while he's pulling that presentation up, there it is. Oh, next. As you know, in 2018, we developed a 5-year plan for the district, and we're 4 years in. We're now in month 22 of a pandemic, and I would recommend that we get into the remaining months of the year looking to update and amend the plan and recalibrate and reset. Keep going, please. Next presentation, Keith. You're at Toolkit. There we go. So I'm going to be intentionally brief with this tonight because what I'd like to request is a work session for the board in March, and then map out what this recalibration or reset looks like over the rest of this, the calendar year. So just quickly as a review, our visioning process in 2018, we engaged feedback from stakeholders, we analyzed the feedback, looking for common themes, and then we created a blueprint for change. And along the way, our process included 50 community meetings. We had at least 4 at each school. We did a web page redesign at the time. We have an award-winning website. At the time, we also we heard from parents and staff and students who were very interested in seeing us expand social media because we had a didn't really have social media presence. We did a lot of staff and student focus groups, so every staff member in Dare County Schools got to give us input in the process. We met with multiple student focus groups at schools. We asked a lot of questions around what's your hopes and dreams for your education, what can we do better in your school, what's working, how can we best support schools. We did multiple surveys. I believe we had over 5,000 parents who participated in various survey process. And our goal was to put students first as we built the plan. We redesigned a vision statement. Previously, it was educate every child. Today, it's together we're building extraordinary schools. We sought staff and parent input on the vision statement. We created core values. Every child matters. Safe and joyful schools. Collective greatness. Talking about our goals as a community and as a school system and our partnerships. Innovation ignites excellence and extraordinary people. We came up with district priorities around active learning. And again, I won't go through this list because we'll get into this in much greater detail in our March session. Talent development, healthy schools, and then community partnerships. And these were all themes that we extracted from all the feedback that we got across the county. We then created indicators for future success And there are 18 of those under each of those 4 stanzas. And I'm pleased to, and we'll go through the data on each of these 18, but I'm pleased to share that of the 18 indicators that the district has made significant progress in 16 of the 18, despite the pandemic. And the 2 areas we would be lacking in presently as far as data goes would be improvement on end of grade and end of course testing and closing the learning gap. Also, despite the pandemic, we've talked a couple of times tonight about the graduation rate. Pre-pandemic, we were at 90.5. This year, we're at 93.7, despite the pandemic. And also prior, I think this is a keynote, Mr. Tauber talked about getting our schools back to where we were performing previously at that high level of standard, what our community expects and what we expect of ourselves. Prior to the pandemic, we set a record in 2018-19 by having 5 schools that exceeded growth, and that's the first time that's happened in over 10 years in Dare County schools. So what I would recommend is that our team works with the board to create a roadmap, a comprehensive process over the next year to update and recalibrate the plan. We certainly have a lot of gaps based upon the outcomes of the pandemic. Might be worthwhile to have a March work session at the pleasure of the board to spend a couple, 2 to 3 hours talking through this, looking at data, looking at action steps, what the board wants to see with community outreach, create action steps and timelines from April to December, and then target a year from now with approval of a new plan after going through an exhaustive process. I think we could use a very similar model to what we did previously, maybe not as extensive. Of those 50 community meetings, sometimes there's 2 people sitting in a media center, and sometimes there's 250 in a gymnasium. But every time we had a meeting, we were face-to-face with the public, answering questions, hearing from the public on everything from curriculum to facilities to school safety and so on. So we're excited for the work. I think it's time. I think we've got to stage this with, I would see the community input process taken off in late spring. And we expect EOC, EOG, the typical accountability measures we have in school districts to count at the end of the year. And then typically what we see is in September, the State Board of Education officially provides us with that district data. And so the data end of this with corrections we may have to make or adjustments would be more towards the fall. So be happy to take questions. If board members have other ideas about a timeline, be happy to entertain those, and looking forward to diving in.
Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I have a question. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. There are no items listed under this agenda item for our consideration this evening, so we'll move on to new business, and I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Kinsel for presenting policy 4231/5021/7263, face coverings for modification consideration.
Good evening, Chairman Tauber, Vice Chairman Twitty, members of the board, Dr. Farley. Thanks for this evening. It's been a great day, and I've really enjoyed being out in the schools with you, so thank you for that opportunity. Per legislation, the board must review and take a vote to consider modification to the policy you adopted back in October. The policy number 4231-5021-7263, face coverings, is up for consideration in terms of any modifications. And, nope, you're fine. You got it.
Any questions, comments, or suggestions?
I have a few comments. Number one, I think this, by design, has set us up to fail. The change from the CDC, and that comes down to the state and then comes to us, and we're supposed to implement this and make all of this make sense so that our kids get an education. And it's extremely frustrating. And I hate the fear that's been installed in everybody, fear of so many things other than not even just getting it, fear of your child getting an not getting an education, fear of getting it, fear of passing it. And at the end of the day, I think that an appeal needs to be made to Raleigh. I think that teachers need to be able to do their jobs without having to be policemen. I believe that the administrators need support in getting that done and supporting their teachers. And until things change in Raleigh, the only way we can guarantee our kids stay in school by design is to put a mask on them. So those are just a few comments that I wanted to throw out there, and I'm good.
Joe?
Any other questions?
No,
Or comments?
Yeah. I've spoken with several teachers and parents over the last month since we voted before. And I realize that the rest of the board might have had different conversations with their parents and teachers, but most of them told me that it hinders the way that they are able to teach, and it hinders the way the kids are able to learn. And even some teachers have been criticized for not wearing their masks correctly. Frankly, I'm getting a little more concerned about the mental health of the kids more than what this disease is doing to them. They're very seldom very sick, and I agree with Mary Ellen. Something's got to change, and we got to figure out a way to do it.
Thank you. I know as a board, we've had discussions about it, and we are very frustrated by what's in front of us. And unfortunately, I guess the legislature has decided to make us vote on this issue every month. So that's what we're tasked to do, and it's really out of our hands. So I'm going to get right to it. As required by Session Law 2020.
Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Frank.
I do believe we need to find a way out of the mess that we're in. And I don't know if this is good, bad, or indifferent. At one point in time, we solicited input from the teachers, from the students, and from the parents as a barometer of where we are. We are in a different place now when that initial test was taken. We're in a different place now where people have a clearer understanding what they're willing to accept and not accept. And I think if we're supposed to represent the parents and to do what's best for the students, that we need to ensure that if we're going to move forward, that we're moving forward in a direction that not only has the acceptance of moving that way, but also understands the risk of making that decision. Because we're not doctors here, and we're having to play the cards that are dealt to us. Just like Mary Ellen said, we're, for lack of better, we're handicapped to some degree. We have a system that's working. It's working very well. But at the same time, that's coming at a cost. And that cost is the kids being masked. And I know it's frustrating that we're masking in school, but when you look out in the general population, it's a foreign thing. So it's confusing to all, and I think we need to have some way of getting a pulse again to find out where the heartbeat is and helping us to make a decision.
Frank, can I clarify? Are you suggesting that maybe we conduct a survey again?
I'm suggesting we consider that.
Yeah.
Because when people come before us, when people call us person to person, we hear both sides of the equation. And I hate the situation where one person has to win so someone else loses. I don't want that. But I want to be able to have something that we can move forward with, just like we talked about getting our schools back to where they were. That's leaning forward. I feel now we're just stuck. And we have to figure out if the state isn't going to do something different, then we have to find out how to work within the system that we're working in. so that we are doing the will of the people and doing what's best for the general population.
Well-
And right now, that is keeping the kids masked up so we can keep them in front of the teachers.
Well, let me say I appreciate the comments from the board members in this issue, and I know it's been very troubling to the board members every month to have to come in front here and listen to the concerns of the parents, see the students, see the, like you said, the comparison between school situation and the community situation, which are quite different. And, leave one's head scratching, to scratch your head going, what's going on? And I'll entertain a motion if anybody wants to, and as it reflects a survey being done, if that's appropriate. Do we need a motion to do a survey, or is that something that you think is necessary, board members think are necessary or not?
The board attorney can jump in. The board can direct us to create a survey. What I would recommend, if that's the direction of the pleasure of the board, is that we've got to have some better control measures in place versus what we've sent out previously, where we got some criticism. We've sent surveys out. I just referenced the community visioning process. We did multiple surveys. We probably sent 15 surveys since I've been superintendent. What is overlooked in the survey conversation, and there's been several references in the last 5 to 6 months about the last parent survey we gave, less than 40% of the parents in the district participated. So the board needs to know going in, and that honestly in survey world is a pretty high water mark.
That's a pretty big number.
So the community would need to know that going in. The board wouldn't have to know. Not everyone's going to participate in a survey. We need to have, and I think we've got some greater capability as we looked at this early in the fall. I'd have to talk with Holly King a little more extensively, and Dr. Parker. We believe we got some measures in the survey process to prevent duplicate surveys, okay? So that was hard for us to measure the last time we surveyed. We may want to consider, if the direction of the board is to direct us to put together a survey process, to do that work and then come back in a special call meeting in 10 to 14 days, and then give it enough time so that we're communicating to the community that this is a process. The board would also have to decide, obviously, you're going to survey parents and staff members. Is there a student component? And if so, what grade levels are you talking about? I wouldn't survey elementary students. You may want to consider 6-12. That's also a decision that will have to be made. But I think one of the key takeaways is you can't expect that you're going to get 75, 80% of the parents who, and maybe they will because this is such a polarizing issue. So our parents are highly informed and attentive, and maybe we'll get much more than 40%, but from a numbers standpoint, a data standpoint, we had less than 40% of the parents who participated. So the reference to 60% does not speak to every single family in Dare County. So if we're directed, we'll certainly do it. I would like to have a little bit of time to look at control measures that we can put in place, and then we'd have to do a significant amount of communication.
I would say if we did a survey, it would be up to the parents. Or whoever gets the survey, it would be their opportunity to either do the survey or not do the survey. That's a choice that they make themselves. But I'll go with the direction of the board wherever the board wants to go. Is that what you were intimating, Frank?
The short answer is yes. How to get there, I'm trying to figure out a way to do it where it doesn't cause a lot of chaos. I agree that it's something that can't be just thrown together. So I appreciate Dr. Farley bringing that to our attention to make sure that what we have will be the best opportunity to gain the data we're looking for. Because I know it depends on the question you ask, also weighs the response that you get. I guess my end goal in this is that the people that are engaged, that do, as we say in the country, have a dog in a fight, which they do because it's their kids, not our kids, it's their kid, that if it means that much to them, they will engage.
You mean in terms of answer the
Responding.
survey? Answer the survey.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Would the board like to comprise a committee?
I think that the danger of this, suppose, just let's run through a scenario. You've got 60% of the teachers say, we want masks, and 75% of the students say, we don't. Or 75% of the teachers say, we don't want them, and the students do. Where are you going to fall?
I think you'd have to look at the data to make a decision about it, for one. But yes, I know there's no perfect answer, but to some degree, we're being held accountable for taking action.
Yes. I think there has to be some consideration for the amount, like we've all said, a certain return or percentage of return on answers, and that's the slippery slope, because like everybody's saying, well, 60%, well, that was 1,500 people out of a possible 10,000. That's not an accurate 60%. So we get these numbers again, you know, it's just a...
And we still got 2 more weeks for we're on that still up curve. You know, if we have Dr. Farley and his staff to send out something or get it to us within 10 or 14 days, we're still in that peak. So I think right now it's just, we need to sit back and wait and see. I agree with you, Frank. We are in a world that none of us really like.
Right.
But we do want to keep our kids in the school building and being taught by our teachers face to face. But with what Dr. Sheila shared with us tonight, with that peak, I still think it's too early right now to jump, to have Dr. Farley's staff to spend that time, because it's going to be a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, and we're also looking at the end of a semester. You're at the end of a semester where you have high school kids that are having to take their end of semester testing for state, all this other stuff, and just throwing all this in with 2 weeks left. I don't know. Something to consider.
Okay. Any other
like
comments?
I said, they have set us up to fail.
Okay. Well, then maybe we should just go back to the original motion as required by Session Law 2021-130. We need to vote on whether or not Policy 4231/5021/7263 face covering should be modified. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we not make any modification to Policy 4231/5021/7263.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lawler. We have a motion and a second to not to modify the policy 4231/5021/7263 face covering should be modified. Is there any discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor say aye.
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 I heard 2 ayes. David, you said aye? So we're voting not to modify. Okay.
Right.
Margaret, are you in favor?
I seconded it.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Okay. All right. Any opposed? I'm opposed. And anybody else? 6-1? All right, motion passes, not to modify.
Hey, Joe, can you count my vote as abstaining, please? I didn't vote either way.
Okay. So you abstained? I think if you abstain, you actually vote for it.
It's positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was still 6-1, is that correct? Okay.
I'm a no vote too.
You're a no as well?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 5-2. Next, Dr. Kinsel will
Mr.
present
Chair,
the first.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify. I believe it will still go on the record, Ms. Bothwell, as you abstaining, but it will count towards a positive, if I'm correct. Okay. Your abstaining from the vote will be on the record, but it will count as a positive. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you for that clarification. Next, Dr. Kinzel will present the first reading of several policy manual updates.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, before we move to that,
Not at all.
can we get some resolution on survey or not, the pursuit of a survey or not, please?
Doesn't appear like we're ready for a survey at this particular time.
Just want a clarification.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
I
Appreciate
agree
it.
with David Twitty. We need to wait. If this thing's going to spike, we just don't know where it's going to go. So I think till we see it declining, then we need to move forward with some kind of a survey. But it's got to be, I know it's a lot of work for you all. It's got to be done right so that we get the right not the right answers, but people can't answer twice or whatever.
I appreciate your willingness to put that together so quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farley. Dr. Kinzel?
You were.
Are you a promotion?
She was awarded with a degree tonight.
I can give you a promotion. Go ahead.
not
Dr.
EDD.
Kinzel. I thought you were a doctor. I'm sorry. You look like a doctor.
That's right. Thank you. In this section of the agenda, I'm going to share with you some policies that were provided to us by the School Boards Association, who we subscribe to, and they give us model policies to formulate our policy manual after, but also provides us with updates periodically based on changes to State Board of Education policies, legislative actions, or other technical changes that may occur as a result of changes in references or footnotes in our policies. So as these recommended revisions are provided, we analyze them and then bring them to the board's policy committee for consideration. Tonight we have several policies that we were reviewed by the policy committee and are now being brought before the full board for first reading. I talked with Mr. Schwartz earlier, and he is going to be providing a legal review during this first read period, so that I can anticipate there will be some modifications that will come back to you before the second reading. And I will thank Ms. Lawler for providing me with some of the technical issues that came out, and we've made some typo changes in the actual policies that may not be reflected in the copies that you received on Friday with the full packet. So, as we discussed, I will provide a brief summary of each policy in terms of what has changed, and we'll go through this for the general public. I will say that anyone that is interested, copies of these policies can be made available upon request if individuals will request them through our website's Contact Us email address. The first policy is on the parental involvement. Some of the major changes on this, by the way, it was not revised it was last revised in October of 2018, so it was due for a look. This new policy, the information is now providing details related to the development of a parental involvement plan to be included with the school improvement plan. Parental notifications for reporting school system achievement information and related data has been included. Just as an aside, we've been providing that information even though it wasn't included in the most current version of this policy. This policy updates information for which parents can withhold consent for release of certain information. It deletes a word in one of the sections to align with the policy on technology responsible use. This part was required for the update within this policy. Again, we'll be sharing this policy ahead of the adoption with our school administrators so that they can begin to look at those components that are within the policy that outline what needs to be put into their parent involvement plan and integrated into their school improvement plans. with the idea that we'll have them come back with an update to you in probably April at the soonest. Dr. Varga? Okay. Oh, yes, we've got a few more policies. The second policy for review is, again, very minor changes to the board meetings, titled Board Meeting Preparation and Participation in Board Meetings. In this policy, there were changes adding more specific information about the remote sections. Have I lost something? I'm sorry? These are all first reads. These are all first reads. So I'll kind of go over the each of the policies so that then they can be considered as a group. Are we good with that? Okay. All right, so the policy 2302, then again, just adds information and clarifies the special rules for Section G in this that only apply to remote meetings. In policy 4120, residence requirements for admission, this policy updates information pertaining to the section on temporary residence as it relates to active military duty and general statutes governing services for children with disabilities, and that is required. It also adds a section on remote enrollment of children of military families in accordance with state laws, and allows the children of active duty members assigned to North Carolina to enroll in school remotely before they establish a residency in the state. And again, that was strongly recommended. In policy 4700, this is student records. Again, this was some required language was added in section H, which provides secondary school students' email addresses to military recruiters upon request unless the parent opts out, as required by new federal law. Policy 5023, which is policy on registered sex offenders. There's a new section in the first part of the policy that provides terms that are used throughout the policy. And so after defining them, it allows for it to be used consistently throughout the policy. There's also an update that on the definition of a registered sex offender in accordance with the new statutory changes, and it modifies the section that talks about making sex offenders. Let me go back a minute. It modifies the sections at the beginning of the policy to make the prohibition on registered sex offenders being present on school property align more closely with the statutory prohibitions found in general statute. Let's see. There were other minor changes to that policy, again, just including the consistent references that go to the sex offender registry. Let's see, the last two policies being put before you are extremely minor. In December, you adopted the records retention and disposition schedule that's required. And so this policy was updated to include the reference in the footnotes so that it would take you directly to those new schedules. So these last two policies on public record retention, release, and disposition, as well as electronically stored information retention, that is the only change in that policy for right now. That's it.
That concludes our presentations for this evening, but what I'd like to do before I end the meeting, I'd like to ask my fellow board members if they have any comments in closing. Mr. Woody?
Yeah, I got a couple. We're putting together a couple of little groups. One of them is an ROTC group to look into ROTC, which I'm excited about. Then we also have the oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it right now. There's a couple, early college. So we're working on the early college, so I'm excited about working on all that stuff. with y'all. But that's all I have.
Margaret?
I'm fine.
Mary Ellen? Susan? Frank?
Just want to say again, it was great to be back in the school system and watching the kids function and the teachers doing their thing. There's hope.
David?
Wait, I've changed my mind.
Yes, absolutely.
4 years ago, we looked at ROTC, and we spent 3 hours with the recruiters, and at that time, they said each high school would have to give a dedicated classroom, and we would have to pay $80,000 for someone to come in. That's a huge salary compared to what teachers make. And I think at that time, we did not have the interest. Maybe we do. But we need to look very hard at something like that.
Well, I think it's worth taking another look at it. That's why some parents had come to me and asked to take another look at it.
Right.
And we're
Well,
going to, we're not committing to anything. We're
right.
just taking another look at
I'm
it.
just saying at that time, when Dr. Farley said, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it at all 3 high schools, they said, thank you, but we're not
Well,
interested.
the committee will make recommendations before the board, and the board can decide, I mean, whether they go forward or not. But we're just looking at it as an option. I'd like to thank everybody, community members, students, faculty, for coming to the meeting. I know it's a difficult time, but just bear with us. We'll get through this. So at this time, I'd like to request a motion to adjourn. Second.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Been a
All in
long
favor,
day.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.